Hi, this is Dan Sullivan, and today I'm going to be talking about cholesterol. So I'm sure that you've heard all kinds of things about cholesterol. Is it bad for you? Is it good for you? How much is too much cholesterol? What types of foods increase your cholesterol? Do you need to be on statins to reduce your cholesterol? I'm sure you've heard of all kinds of stuff about cholesterol, and so today what I hope to do is clarify some of those things and give you the lowdown on cholesterol. So let's just dive right in. So cholesterol, there's a lot to it. So instead of just looking at total cholesterol, what I like to do is look at HDL, LDL, and also triglycerides. So anytime you're looking at blood work, it's best to do a comprehensive analysis and looking at a lot of different numbers, more than just that one number. So a lot of people will put a ton of weight behind one number, and I don't think that's the best approach. So there's a lot to be learned from these other numbers and the relationship between them. So a lot of times the problem lies in elevated triglycerides, which are usually a result of a diet that's way too high in refined carbohydrates and sugars. So what these do is they actually back up the liver and raise triglycerides a lot of the time. Now, people can process carbohydrates differently, I understand that. There's genetics at play and so forth, but essentially, the majority of the time, people with high triglycerides are consuming too many carbohydrates that their body can handle. And so what happens with carbohydrate consumption or with sugar consumption, which sugar is a type of carbohydrate, that the body becomes inflamed as well. And so when the body becomes inflamed, you can actually look at different markers of inflammation in the body that would be really, really good to look at in addition to just your cholesterol. So that's why I was saying it's really good to look at more than just your total cholesterol. I would look at things like C-reactive protein and homocysteine as markers of inflammation, and that's sort of a topic for a whole nother discussion, but essentially you want to be really looking for those things too. So what happens when the body is inflamed is that the blood vessels, the arteries, are basically getting kind of chewed up, and they're getting these little micro tears or you have these little ninjas in there that are kind of slicing things up, and so it's really not a good picture, right? And so what happens is a lot of times people will give cholesterol the bad rap. They'll say, cholesterol is no good, it's clogging your arteries, but what's happening actually is that cholesterol is going in there into your arteries and your veins, and it's actually patching up the damage due to the inflammation the majority of the time, right? So that's kind of a common misconception that a lot of people will have. They think that cholesterol is the enemy, so they're blaming the firefighter for actually putting out the fire. So we got to really take a step back and look at why do you have high cholesterol, or why do you have high triglycerides, more specifically. Why are your ratios skewed in a negative direction, and why do you have high inflammation? So those are sort of things that we need to look at first before we're just going to say, oh, you have high cholesterol, let's work on your diet and let's put you on a drug or so forth, right? So that's one of the things that I'd really like to clarify with people when I'm looking at their cholesterol. Now, there's a lot of different things that you can do with diet that help to reduce your triglycerides and help your ratios to come back. So one of those things is the consumption of omega-3 fatty acids, right? So these are things found in cold water fish. I'm sure you've heard of your salmon, sardines, also nuts and seeds, things like walnuts. However, fish are going to be the best source, or high quality fish oil. Those are going to be the best source and most readily convertible into your omega-3s, with the subcomponents being DHA and EPA, which these are really anti-inflammatory. They're very good for your brain health and overall your body health as well. So that's one way to really work on that. The other, like I alluded to earlier, was the consumption of those sugars and those refined carbohydrates. So you really want to drastically reduce the amount of sugar and the amount of refined carbohydrates that you're consuming. So that's another way to really get your cholesterol back in check. Cholesterol itself is really necessary, right? The brain needs adequate levels of cholesterol in order to function. It's made up of a lot of percentage of cholesterol, and so are your nerves, your myelin, the coating that coats your nervous system. So that stuff all needs cholesterol, and so it's not necessarily a bad thing. Too much or too little cholesterol are both not good things. So you really want to have that ideal number of cholesterol. And so let's talk about some numbers. So I'm looking at, I pulled up on my computer here some numbers and some ratios. And so ideally, total cholesterol, the numbers can vary because of genetics, heredity, and so there's definitely some wiggle room around that. And so some people will just have a higher set point than others, and that's okay. You might have a level of 220 or so, or 210 or 230. That can be fine as long as all of your other numbers are looking really good. Your inflammation, your triglycerides, and all those other numbers, we really want to make sure that those are all in check and they're really working synergistically together. Now, if you have high total cholesterol with high triglycerides, high LDL, very low HDL, high inflammation, that's a recipe for disaster, right? So you really have to look at it in context of all the other numbers. So when we're looking at triglycerides, triglycerides should be in the pathological or the normal range, should be anywhere from 0 to 150. And I wouldn't recommend 0, that would be bad, but anywhere less than 150. Now, where I like to see them is in a more functional range or a more optimal range, and that's anywhere from 70 to 80. Anything under 100 is you're really looking good. And then LDL and HDL are different players as well. And so LDL, there's actually different subparticles of LDL, which I really won't dive into in this video. But HDL, love to see that around 55 to 70. That's the optimal range. And then the LDL being anything under 120. And so the LDL, the normal range is anything under 130, and the normal range for the HDL being about 46 to 100. And this depends on the different labs that you're going through. So this is just what I have here, but it's going to be roughly about the same. And so the ratios as well correlate to those things. And so you can kind of go into more depth. I don't want to do that in this video, but you can also do that, look at ratios as well. So I hope that was helpful. Cholesterol oftentimes gets a bad rap, and I don't think it deserves that. So there's a lot to go into with cholesterol. There's a ton of information that I could have covered that I didn't. I'm trying to keep it a little bit shorter. So if you do have any questions or want me to elaborate on anything, please do comment below. I enjoy answering your comments, answering your questions. Hopefully this made a difference for you. And if you liked it, please like it. Click the like button and share it with any friends that you might have. And again, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you watching.